Adriana, welcome and thank you for joining us. And what I'd like to start with is just inviting you to tell us a little bit about your business and your book.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. It's really good to be here. So I really want it to be about everybody, not about me, but just so you get to know a little bit about me. My business journey started out when I was about 17 years old. And over the past 2 and a bit decades, I've started, developed and sold more than 10 enterprises. And that makes me feel very comfortable in the business space. And I've been consulting for probably about 12 to 13 years to businesses globally in business improvement and to help them and help the business and the business people get from where they are to where they want to be. I'm also an author, and my book is based on a 28-day journey on taking the reader through pretty much taking a deep dive into pretty much what they want in their personal setting, their professional setting and business goals as well, and aligning them to take them through the journey to understand pretty much what they need to do and to develop milestones and also bite-sized chunk action plans to get them to that next stage of development. I could keep talking, but I'd rather leave it to the Q&A where people can ask me questions, which is more personalized into what they need to know.
Look, I think that's fabulous. And as you know, and on your suggestion, which was a brilliant suggestion, and I'll do this all the time now with these sessions, you said to me, what would your people like to know about? I got some great questions, so I'll read these questions out, and then of course we'll open up for Q&A within the group, because as you answer these questions, I'm sure more questions will emerge. That's the beauty of questions, really. Somebody sort of prefaced their question by saying that they found it very depressing when they were first starting out, and they were told by business coaches that you need to spend a lot of money to make money. Now, that's the preface to this question, which is what advice would you give to somebody who's just starting out in business?
That's an awesome question. If you don't mind me kind of expanding a little bit further into that, I think firstly, if somebody's going to be engaging a coach or a consultant, that you really need to make sure that that person is the right fit, and also that they've got a track record, that they can walk the talk, and not necessarily, if you don't mind me saying this in the nicest possible way, you can have a textbook or somebody that's potentially purchased a franchise and they don't have the experience or a track record to back themselves in the advice they're giving. Because if that's the case, you're really getting ripped off, if you don't mind me saying, for the reason that you can look up online or go to somebody that can mentor you. That doesn't cost to get that right advice. So just through things that I've seen, and it really irks me when people do get taken for a ride in that way. So it's just me being totally honest there with that. But the advice I can give in terms of spending money to make money, that's certainly important. But on the flip side, when it comes to gaining advice, what you can do, instead of going out spending $20,000 on a program or X amount per month on someone that could potentially be giving you advice, if you don't have the money, don't spend it. Don't go take out a loan on engaging that right advice. You can listen to podcasts, pick up a good book, which is obviously what Jane would love to hear, but listen to audiobooks. You can go on Booktopia and spend a little bit of money to get a little bit more knowledge to help you hone skills that you've already got, or develop skills you don't have, to help you to understand what to do instead of going out and spending money on a consultant. When it comes to spending money to make money, it certainly is important, but see what resources you have available within the network that you have that can help you to certainly get ahead without spending a lot of money before you've got that money to spend. And if you are going to spend money, make sure it's in an area of your business that's going to give you that return on investment. I could go into so many different avenues here, but to be a little bit more specific into helping a startup here, I think that you need to identify that firstly, you need to have a good service or niche market to be able to be put out there, to be marketed, to give you that return. So once, if you're starting up and you've realized that your product or service is certainly something that's sellable, then what you need to do is understand how you can get in front of the right people to buy your product or service. So spending money on exposure is really important. And you can also gain exposure without necessarily spending money. So first, identify what you need to do to get that right exposure. And the best way to do that is to get in front of the right people or companies to sell your product or service to. So you can at first do that without spending money. But if you need to spend money, make sure that it's very targeted. And then once you are getting on with getting sales and repeat sales, invest money in delegating so that you can focus on the strategy and you can focus on gaining more sales and servicing the clients. Always look at investing your money into an area and your time into an area of focus that's going to help you with your return on investment, and certainly gaining exposure and also buying time back so that you can invest into the business to grow it. Because a business that's an idea without sales isn't going to get you far at all.
Oh, that's really great advice. That's a great point to finish that on. And probably something I would throw in as well is not to deprioritize the daggy stuff. The daggy stuff like setting a budget, being really focused on your numbers. And, you know, we can get carried away with networking or, you know, the creative side of our business, but somebody has to do that work. So you're either lucky enough to have someone to delegate it to, but you've got to keep your head across all of those things as well. That's just something I would throw in. After having made almost every mistake in the book in terms of opting into those really expensive programs. You know, I've just launched my 4th book, not to talk over the top of you, because I think your book is one that has stood the test of time, versus me being someone who wrote the first 2 books I wrote really were not of any benefit to the business that I run now. But I was almost going to subtitle Mindset for Business, how to avoid every sleazy bastard who tells you that their program is all you need to get to 7 figures. I was counseled on the fact that I would turn some people off by the negativity involved in that. So I put this, what was going to be the subtitle, on the back cover instead, because I couldn't get away from the fact that if I heard that, you know, my program's the only program you need to get to 7 figures or to get to high 6 figures or something like that, we've got to keep our heads on and be practical. I guess that's my advice. Let's get into some more of these questions, Adriana. This is a great question, actually. What advice would you give to 2 friends who are thinking of starting a business together?
Yep, that could work really well or really go against in every which way possible. So firstly, if you need to form a partnership for whatever reason, I think it's really, really, really important that you identify that you're both complementary. Firstly, you need to identify that you both got the same goals in life. Also, that you want the same thing out of your business in the short or the long term. Otherwise, if you don't, there's going to be conflict at some point. And also, you need to really understand what your skill sets are. Looking back, working with different people over the time in their businesses, the partnerships that work really well are when the business partners have got the same vision, they've got the same values, but also they've got complementary skill sets. So there's not much overlap there. So one person can pick up X and the other person can pick up X, so that they can kind of continue and complement each other in that journey. If there's a misalignment in their goals, that's certainly going to be problematic at some point. And if there's an overlap in skill set of one's picking up more weight than the other, it's not going to work either. And it could even be that one's got all the skills and the time and the drive to get that business going, and the other person dumps the money in. That's fine as well. But you need to make sure that there isn't much overlap, and you've got some sort of plan in place that really identifies at a deep level what you want in the short and the long term, to understand that on the onset.
That's great. Yes. And I think it's to establish the clarity up front that you mentioned, making sure the goals are aligned, making sure, you know, everybody's needs are being met in the scheme of things. So yeah, and excellent question, that one. And this is another beauty as well. What advice would you give to someone with an established business that's growing really quickly, and they have a small family as well, and they're starting to get overwhelmed? That's probably not that uncommon too. It's a lucky problem to have in business, that, you know, things are taking off, but yeah, you've got to manage that situation.
Yep. That's a really good question. Like, there's two things that really come to mind on the onset. Going back to what you mentioned earlier about keeping your finger on the pulse, you really need to understand what's happening in each department of the business, keeping your finger on the pulse in the finances to make sure that as the business grows quickly, the profits are still there, if not increasing. So that's one thing. So you've got to focus on the operations and the profits, and then delegate all you can at home at first, so that when you're at home, you can focus on the family, because there's nothing worse than seeing people having a business that's taking off and successful, but then their family life suffers. So delegate the ironing, housework, even shopping, the whole lot, so that when you're at home, you've got time for your partner and the children, so that that unit can be present at home as much as possible when you're there. And in the business, really making sure that when you employ people, that they're the right people, and also that they're able to provide you weekly reports, so that as you're running around developing the business, getting sales, taking care of the customers, whatever that looks like, that there's key people in the right departments as time goes on that can provide you reports to help you understand what's working really well, what's not going so well, problems that have occurred that week, for example, and also the solutions that they've come up with to help you resolve those problems as well. So it's all about keeping your finger on the pulse, and then even delegating more within the business, so that you can be free and not bogged down to continue with the growth and continue focusing on the vision and developing the next milestones to get to that end, I guess, goal in whatever that looks like for you.
Great points. Now, here's another one too, is what questions should someone ask a business coach to get a good sense of whether that person's the right fit? And this takes us back to what you said initially, isn't it? It's about, you know, is this person going to address my needs? What are the questions people should be asking?
Yeah. Well, firstly, definitely have a meeting with them if you can, face-to-face, in person or over Zoom, just to make sure that chemistry is there, because the values are very important. Because consultant or coach will certainly cover certain things that sometimes will cross over into other areas away from the business that support the business. So the values need to be aligned, so that you're gaining that right advice that's aligned with who you are as a person and your business values as well. But I think you really need to make sure that they've got a track record, and don't be shy to ask them point blank, because if they do have a track record, they'd be quite comfortable to share with you certain achievements that they've got under their belt, as well as maybe some examples of how they've helped people as well. So certainly make sure they've got a track record and the fit's right.
Perfect. Yes, what you just mentioned about examples of how they've helped people, I think that's a great spin to put on a question. And also possibly what's the toughest problem you've helped somebody solve? Yeah. Maybe something like that. Yeah, so sort of drill down with your questions. I reckon that's key, isn't it?
Yes. As well, make sure that to some degree that they've got a way of giving you some sort of return on your investment as well. Otherwise, I think that's going to be a bit problematic as well.
Great. Yes, that's a good question too, is what is the return on investment likely to look like if I work with you?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that? Yeah, what a great question. I wish I had this conversation 5 years ago with you. Anyway, that's how it is, isn't it? Really? That's how it is. Now, listen, tell us a little bit more about the book then. Simple Strategies for Success. I'd love to hear more.
Sure. So it entwines my personal journey into good basic practical principles on how to start and develop a business. And the 28-day journey really takes someone, like I said earlier, through that deep dive into really understanding what's already in place, what needs to be put in place, issues that could potentially be looked at, what's working really well, so that through that 28-day journey, you follow through with completing that action plan and reviewing things and putting things in place to, in a practical way, transform and revitalize yourself in the way that you look at that business, as well as helping you to bring to the surface that spark you had when you first started the business that could have faded out, especially in the past year or so, to bring that to the surface with new ideas to further develop the business, and by the end have that fresh start and that reset and a practical plan on how to develop things further.
Great. And I'd love to hear how business people are using their books within the business. I know that when I first came to one of your business breakthrough events, there was the book as a lucky door prize.
Yeah.
Do you include the book with your coaching packages or any things like that as well?
Yeah, right. I do provide it to my clients when they come on board or when I meet new people. So it's a great practical business card, so to speak. But it's very useful to people to have a read, to understand who I am, and also to understand a little bit more about my background and skill set before we get started. So they kind of get to know me before we start working together. And I think it's just a really good handbook that someone can pick up at any time as well.
Well, actually, someone's put a question in the chat bar here of where can they get it?
Oh, okay. So it's in a couple of bookstores. There's Burklow's. They currently sell it. It's available on Amazon. Through my website, and it's also in airports, so they're starting to open up as well.
How did you
get
that to happen? That's a fantastic result for any author to get their book in the airport.
I was really fortunate. I've self-published my book, so I've got a couple, and with Simple Strategies to Success, I went through a different channel, and they've got some distributors. So I was very fortunate that one of their distributors took a liking to it and put into the airport shops as well.
Yep, great. And you said Berkelow's, and why I'm now interested, because I want to go get a hard copy. I've got a soft copy, but I want a hard copy. So Berkelow's, which Berkelow's?
Rose Bay.
Rose Bay Berkelow's.
Yes,
I might just be heading down there, and because nothing quite like an actual book in the hand.
Yeah.
But so yes, that Josephine asked that question. So Josephine, if you want to get an actual hard copy, Berkelow's for that.
But if you like, I'm happy to send you a signed copy as well.
If we order from your website,
you email me and I can send you a signed copy.
Oh, beautiful. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Look, I think I'm feeling a vibe that if I open up for questions now, that might be the right thing to do. So you happy to invite people to unmute themselves and ask Adriana any questions that we haven't already answered? And just go ahead, don't be shy.
Thanks. You've spoken so briefly, but you've managed to say so many valuable points. A lot of those things that you've suggested, I've done, and hence my interest in what you had to speak about today, and hence my interest in your book. I think, yeah, we all fall in the category of learning the hard way sometimes.
Yeah. And to be honest, it's all a process, isn't it? I think with that, when you form, I guess, a community like this, like Jane has, it's really powerful because you can bounce ideas off each other and listen to different speakers to fast track your success and sometimes avoid making those silly mistakes. I mean, I've been doing what I'm doing for over 25 years. So I guess I've learned along the way. And earlier on, I learned some really big lessons. And I wouldn't be so confident speaking about this, I guess, from the mind and the heart if I hadn't been through that. So to have these sorts of forums are so powerful to be able to fast track your success.
So true. Thank you.
And Victoria, did you have a question?
I missed the point that Adriana was talking about her book and where we can get it. I just missed that. I got distracted a little bit, if you don't mind.
Where you can get it. So I'm happy to post your signed copy. if you wanted to email me the details, I'm happy
Yes,
to.
do you want to just say your email address then? And
Yeah, should I put it in the chat?
that's great. And say it as well too, just so that when people are watching the recording.
Sure. Okay, sure. So it's of course, it's Adriana, Adriana at consultingaustralia.com.au.
Fantastic. Any more questions? Well, I do have one then, if nobody else is jumping in. I'd like to hear more about you building businesses and selling them. Yeah. What was that like? What were the businesses? Was that the plan to sell them, or did it all organically happen?
Yeah, a variety of different things. So I started out when I was 17 and 9 months, and back then I knew that I wanted a business when I was 13 years old. I was brought up on, and I remember riding my push bike around the farmhouse with my brother, and we stopped under this bay leaf tree under the kitchen window, and I said to my brother, who's 3 years younger than me, "Hey Rob, what do you want to do when you grow up?" And he said, "I don't know." And I said, "I want to have a business." And the purpose of that was to really have, I guess, the ability to have security. That's what I was thinking, and the ability to develop a life for future generations. Coming from an Italian background, family, community was hugely important, and my grandparents and parents are very hardworking, and I just knew that I wanted a slightly different life. But I was grateful for the opportunity that I was given in that type of environment. And it was very loving and full of community, etc. And I was instilled lots of great values, which I think has underpinned my ability to have achieved what I've achieved. So I'm grateful for that. But I knew that I wanted a business, and back then there's a lot of talk about robots taking over everything and things being automated. So I was actually thinking, what type of business can I have that I could get into easily, that's practical, that isn't going to get taken over by computers? And I thought everyone needs a haircut, and computers surely can't take over that type of business. So I left school at the end of year 10, and I had my first hair salon, and I wasn't trained to do that. I didn't do that. So to own that business, I needed to be sponsored by a senior stylist to be able to run that sort of business. So I did that. And then I worked out that if I could put people in that shop, that those people could pay me money to rent part of the shop, and that would help me to pay the rent easier to open up profits. So I started subletting, yeah. So that was what I did quite soon. And then back then in that area, there were lots of like thieves and break-ins, which was unfortunate, but it actually pushed my thinking to save money and purchase land to build premises in an area that I could trade longer hours and also be more secure with security. So I saved money and I purchased land, and I developed, I actually built a house and a shop type thing that actually was able to be in an area that was quiet, secure, where we could trade 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, to cater for people that were working. And yeah, that was it. That was history. So I put on my hard hat and was a project manager for that building, and it was a purpose-built shop, yeah, and opened it up, and it started to win awards, and we booked out 60 hours a week, yeah, pretty much 6 weeks in advance. It was amazing. And I duplicated that model and developed it into a franchise, and that was my real life MBA, because it was probably when I was then 21, I met my future husband. And
this is all by the time you're 21.
Yeah, I was, yeah. So when I was 23, like, it was already fully established, yeah. So I had my first business when I was 17 and 9 months. And then by the time I was 21, I'd already bought the land. Yeah, and then I was on my way. So that's what happened.
Oh, this is incredible though, your background. I had no idea.
Yeah. So I'm not sure how much you heard, but that developed, and then I just kept going. And then as I was learning, I realized that that's what you do in big business. And I just kept going. And it's all about understanding what you're trying to do and understanding who your market is and connecting the two. It's not rocket science at all, but you have to do it really well. So you have to understand the service you're providing or the product that you're selling, who your market is, and getting in front of those people to offer that product to them and doing it sincerely, and then delivering that service or product to the people in a really good way and doing it consistently, whatever level you're at, and getting feedback from your target market or clients, and pretty much understanding what they want in the future so that you can be ahead of the game to, they call it innovation, to think ahead, to change your service or product to help people with what they need today and in the future, so that they don't go somewhere else. They can stay and pretty much keep buying from you and your business. I mean, I could talk about it for another week. There's so many different parts to it, but it's not rocket science at all. And then it's just keeping yourself motivated and fresh and fueling yourself so that you still retain that passion and the ability to serve people. And then as the business grows, it's so important, as you touched on earlier, Jane, to keep your finger on the pulse and stay humble. It's really important to stay humble and grounded, because as soon as those feet come off the ground, it's almost like the scaffolding goes and you will fall, guaranteed you'll fall. So it's really important through all levels of success to stay grounded, humble, and keep serving people.
Fantastic. Look, something that came to mind when you were talking about, it's about getting yourself in front of the people who need your service. What tips have you got around that? How do you find those people, especially when you're starting out?
Yeah, so it depends on the type of business. I've had lots of different ones. So I was just focusing on that because that's the beginning of the journey. But with hair and beauty, it's really easy because people need a haircut. And if you do it well and you've got a nice ambience and people come in, they're going to come back, because there's no reason for them to go somewhere else if you do a good job. When it comes to something else, like, for example,
I was just going to say, I have a lot of coaches and consultants who are, very competitive markets.
That is a different beast altogether. I've had so many different businesses and sold products as well. And it's so easy to do because you've got something tangible. When I started consulting, I did a lot of self-reflection and did so much study and spoke to people that were at the head of the game, because I'm not good at putting myself forward. So I'm very fortunate that people come to me to utilize my service even today. And then through my results, they refer people, and that's how I get business. But books are so important when it comes to promoting your business as a coach or a consultant, because you've got that credibility in the book. But it's really, really important when you're a consultant or a coach to have something that you can offer people so that they can kind of see what they're getting. Because as a coach or a consultant, you're selling the invisible, and most consultants or coaches don't charge little. So people need to understand that if they're going to spend X, that what they're getting for their money, that they can't actually take away with them. Like, if you're going to spend 20,000 or 200,000 on a car, you go into the shop, hand over the check, and you drive away in your car. And you feel safe because you've got that car, you pay insurance, you've got that car. If you're going to drop $500 to $100,000 on a consultant or a coach, it's kind of a little bit more risky for most people, because you're kind of handing over that money without really understanding, or you can't physically take away what you're buying. So the only the most important tip I could probably provide coaches and consultants is to make sure that you have got something documented. So when people are questioning or interviewing you about maybe coming on board with you, that you've got maybe steps in place that you can take them through on pretty much the journey working with you, so they understand that they come on board, this is how it looks.
I think it comes back to this space of clarity. If you're offering the service or if you're buying the service, to be very clear in a service-based industry, which of course coaches and consultants very much are in, there's not that tangible that Adriana was talking about. Very much the case that it needs to be clear who is responsible for what and what is the desired outcome. And if you're the coach, then you need to possibly be having reality checks with your client about what is possible really in the scheme of things. It's about, but it's about quantifying wherever possible, I think. And as Adriana said, documenting.
Yeah. And I think it's also, if I'm back, I'd like to share, it's really important to understand what your client's problem is, like why they're reaching out to you. And then in that proposal, it's important to highlight that sincerely, how you can help them tick that box, because that's their ROI. So if they want to earn X amount more, if they want their business to develop to be generating X more, if you can show them in that timeline that you can help them get there, and then obviously over deliver, that's going to be amazing. Or it could be that they need more confidence or they need more clarity. If they can get that, that's going to translate into results for them as well. So different people need different things. Like just to share with you, I've got a client that I've been seeing for probably 3.5 years now, and she does what I do, but she needed me as her double. So I go in as her CEO, and I pick up all this stuff from her that she can't get to, and she sometimes just needs a soundboard where she locks me in a room in her office and she just chats to me. But what I'm getting at is, when I first met with her, she said, look, don't talk to me about marketing, don't talk to me about pretty much how to get business, don't even go there, because that's not what I want. And I knew that was a no-go zone. And she's the sort of person where she's very directive. She knows what she wants, what she needs, how to get there. So it's very, I have to operate quite fluidly. But on the flip side, I've got other clients that don't have any skills that I have, that don't have the clarity, that don't have tools or any ability to get from where they are to where they want to be. So I need to then lay that out in a very simplified format to help them understand that they need to develop X, put this plan together, and take them and walk them through it in baby steps to get to that next step. So you really need to understand who your client is, and then you need to take out of your toolbox what's required for that client. It can't be that cookie cutter approach, and that's where you add that value.
Ask another question, Adriana. When you were 17 to 21, and you were doing all those business transactions, who did you use as a sounding board? Because it doesn't sound like you had a business coach or anyone to advise you.
Nobody.
So at what point did you think this is beyond my abilities? I need to get a business coach, or do you still not have a business coach?
When I was 25, I remember, because at that stage I'd had a few businesses, so it grew into a franchise, and I had lifelong goals, and I'd achieved them all. And I got to this point where I was kind of floundering, thinking, because I'm very driven. What do I do next? What's my next step? Like, where do I go? How do I do it? And I just didn't think past that. And thinking back now, I think if I was to have been mentored by somebody at 25, I would have further fast-tracked. Not that I've done poorly, but I think at that point I kind of plateaued for a little bit. And I was kind of a little bit lost for a year or so. In saying that, no one would have known, because I was smashing it. My businesses were award winning and I was earning amazing money for that age. And it helped me. I'm lucky that I was able to invest. So I didn't, my business success didn't flounder, but me as a person, I probably felt like I was held back at that point. And it's a very distinctive point in time. And I remember I was at an awards night, and I received a few awards that night. My parents were there, and my dad said to me, pretty much, we don't need to worry about you know what you're doing. And I freaked out. I thought, no, I need something. And that's going back to your question, when I realized I need support. And I didn't engage in a coach at that point, but I was right into self-help audio tapes and things like that, because I was working 60 hours a week, 7 days a week at multiple locations. So I was still into my training, fitness, all that. I was going to the gym every day. I was still very driven in that regard. But on the flip side, I dived into audio books and like the whole Tony Robbins thing and all that type of thing. But it wasn't until I was probably into my mid-30s that I engaged in support with a mentor. Yeah, so I was always on that self-help journey, but didn't engage in somebody until a lot later. And in all sincerity, I'm actually thinking of reaching out to somebody now as a mentor for my next stage of development. But you don't need to invest in an expensive coach or consultant if you're not ready for it. I mean, I'm walking proof of that. I think what's key is to have the right group around you. So you need to make sure that when it comes to business, that you're around like-minded people that support one another to develop and thrive, opposed to being around people that maybe don't share your vision and your desire to and drive to get to that next stage. I think that is certainly key. But it is important to surround yourself with good people and also have a mentor in whatever form or shape that might look to you.
And for anyone in Sydney, and I know a few of the people on the call here are, definitely check out Adriana's Business Breakthrough community. Now, have you got that set up as a meetup group or anything like that, Adriana, or an easy way for people to find it, or just when they email you, you can send them back?
Yeah, sure. So if you want to email me, then I can certainly send you the link. I've got 2 websites, the Consulting Australia website, and that's how you can purchase the book. Or even if you just send me your details, I'm happy to share with you the details on how I can send you the book through that email instead of paying fees. And it's a little bit easier that way. And also I've got another website, adrianacecere.com. And on that is where you can find out information about the Business Breakthrough community. And I'm happy to put you on the mailing list if that would be helpful. But I'm not sure if you've shared about Inspired by Women.
No, I haven't yet. Oh, thank you for
that as well.
Yes, please. Let's talk
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, so that might be something useful as well. I was engaged by a lady called Marie Vlahos a little while ago. I think we met in 2020 because she needed help with developing her business called Inspired by Women. And through some work, she ended up putting me on as a partner. So Inspired by Women is an awesome community where women come together, and even men, to support each other in that type of setting as well. And we've got partners like Jane that can help people at the next stage of their journey as well through their service and products. But it's an awesome community, and we donate money to charities as well that support women and children. So yeah, that's a beautiful, beautiful cause as well.
I've never met anyone who at 25 has hit all of their goals. You were an early starter, and you just hit the ground running by the sound of you. But the point is here that you're continuing to evolve, and this new initiative is very much about that, isn't it? It's about staying fresh, keeping a very clear sense of purpose. And yeah, it's great to actually hear more about what's got you to here.
Yeah, I think Inspired by Women's awesome. To be honest, I didn't have time for another business. But when I was helping Marie, I thought it's really special. You don't often come across an opportunity to be involved in the thick of it and the face of something that ticks all the boxes. You touched on purpose. I think one thing that I can't highlight enough, you need clarity and you need purpose. And once you've got that aligned, there's no way that you're not going to succeed, because there's help out there to get you through everything else, because everything else is just technical. If you've got an idea or a product or a service that is needed, if it's aligned with purpose and you've got that aligned with your goals, it's going to work. It will work. You just need to work at it. And there's help out there for that. But with Inspired by Women, it's really cool in the way that it's difficult to come across something that is so beautifully purpose driven, because with the members of Inspired by Women, they come on from all different walks of life. They're women that could be in a really dire straight scenario where they need support to get on their feet after maybe a bad relationship, and they could be on the streets, but they get that support through Inspired by Women. And it could be someone that's chugging along well, or a woman that's already really established that needs support to get to her next level. So we offer support with, say, investments, property strategies, etc., guidance and advice and superannuation, right through to helping women in a really dire straight situation to be able to be nurtured through a charity that is ready there to support them get out of that bad scenario and be put in a house with everything they're ready for them to get back on their feet, and with the support of the community as well. So that's the purpose of Inspired by Women, to really help women at different stages of life through out Australia to develop and thrive, depending on where they're at. But we've also got partners that have formed a panel of business and lifestyle experts, and they're men and women in all different industries. Marie's from a finance background, she's a mortgage broker, and obviously I've got the business background, but the focus is to bring on more partners. I think I've engaged now about 70, and they're from all different backgrounds, all different industries, because I believe To be successful, it's not only about having money in the bank or to be known in your industry. That helps because with that gives you a lot of leverage and a lot of choice. So that's what we aim for, to have choice. But I think it's so important to have a good diet. So we've got nutritionists on the panel. It's so important to have a good exercise routine, spiritual aspects of things, like there's people there for that as well, whatever that means for you. Obviously finance, business, career, personal grooming, stylist. That's just a tip of the iceberg of the different support that you get inspired by women. Even personal travel, that's included as well. So these businesses and partners on the panel help with that. And what I'm working on at the moment as well is to offer members the ability to shop, like for example at Woolworths, if all goes well, Temple and Webster, you name it. I want to get these partners on board so that once you shop through, I guess, these different retailers like you normally would, a portion of that purchase gets deposited into a savings account. So you spend like you normally would, but it could be 5%, for example, goes into your savings account. So it kind of costs people not to become a member, depending on where they're at, type thing. So it's such a beautiful thing because it supports people that need the help. It supports businesses that want exposure to a market and to give back to that market. And we give to charities as well. So it kind of feels good to be there.
It seems like some really interesting thinking's gone into this as well. That idea with Woolworths. I mean, you're in the process of brokering that agreement.
Yes.
You even thought that's a genius idea. Was that your idea? You're looking like you're too shy to say that.
Yeah, I think because I think it's all about, once again, offering value, and that's offering value to the members, offering value to the retailers. Some have been fairly badly stung, and also giving back to the partners as well. So it's really a win-win-win.
It's very cool. Yeah, that's fantastic. Now, we've probably only got time for about one or two more questions, so speak up. Oh, Josephine, you're doing well today.
Adriana, do you believe that there are some people who just shouldn't be in business?
If they don't have the ability to self-reflect and maybe realize that certain things need to be done a certain way, possibly. But I think if someone's got the desire, that there's always a place for them to have a business. Everybody's got the ability to learn. And it's just finding that right fit to support someone in an environment to develop skills to learn. So if there's two sides to that, if someone's got that desire and the ability to do what it takes, I think for sure anyone can do it. And it doesn't cost to start. It really doesn't. But on the flip side, if someone's so determined in their ways and they're not willing to be flexible in certain aspects of development, then they might give it a go, but it might not work out depending on where their shortfalls are, if that makes sense.
It's an interesting question, Josephine. Where did that come from? Are you worried that you may not be?
It comes from hearing countless of times when I was in startup mode. Oh, you're still not making money. You should consider quitting. Business is all about money. And it just really rubbed me the wrong way because going back to what you were saying, Adriana, it's about your values. And my values were never, I'm doing this for money. I was doing this for, obviously for money, to be financially independent, but I wasn't driven by money. I'm still not driven by money. So that would grate on me. And I thought, am I a failure at business because I don't have that value of being money hungry or being driven by money?
In that regard, I think you could look at it two ways. Maybe speak to your accountant or maybe somebody that could partner with you to help with getting sales in, because without making money, then the business can't survive. So cash flow and funds coming in, revenue coming in, it's the lifeline of the business. It can't continue or develop without that. So if you feel a bit like maybe uncomfortable with that, definitely pay for someone to do that for you, or speak to someone that can give you advice on how you can develop those skills, or do lots of reading, or maybe other people that have been in your position and how they've been able to navigate through it to still feel comfortable with the value side of things, but also to develop the business to be making money, because you certainly need to do that. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Even not-for-profits and charities need to make X to obviously continue. So it does go hand in hand. But if you don't feel that you've got the time or the values, for whatever reason, to do that, certainly partner with someone that can do that for you. It could be in marketing, or it could be in whatever skill sets required there. And that's a really good question, because now I'm thinking of past scenarios and even my present situation. There's going to be different stages of your journey in business where you're not going to have the skills and you might not have the time to develop the skills, or it could be that maybe sometimes you might not have the cash flow to recruit somebody to do that job for you, and you may need to somehow do that job yourself, or somehow barter on the side to get somebody else to do that job so that the business can continue to grow. Because the business has got certain facets that are fundamental to the business developing, and that's certainly sales, marketing, admin, which is what needs to happen as well, and also operations and finance. So without those different elements covered, it's going to get to a point where you're going to get stuck, and you need to either do that work yourself or delegate it to somebody. So there's different ways of doing that at different stages of the journey. And I guess now with Inspired by Women, for example, because I'm still consulting, like I was mentioning to Jane earlier when we had a quick chat before you guys came on board, I'm actually down south at the moment visiting a client, and like I'm flat out like with consulting. So Inspired by Women is certainly something that I've really helped to get some good traction on in the last, say, 3 months since I was appointed in the role. But I don't have time to do everything, and Marie's already flat out doing her thing. So I've got to speak to Marie on Friday about putting on someone for marketing, because there's certain communication that needs to go out that I don't have time to draft now. It's just impossible for me to do. So I've set the groundwork up in place so that I can now give those templates to somebody to pick up, to then work with, to build communication, to send to members and partners on a regular basis, to keep people connected. So it doesn't matter what stage you're at in business. You always need to think, okay, why doesn't it feel right? What's niggling? What isn't working? And speak to somebody that is experienced, and feel free to give me a call or shoot me an email. I'm happy to just send you some information on whatever it could be, on what that next step could be to focus on, so that you can progress, because it's going to keep evolving, and it's going to be a time where you want to step back, or you don't have the skills, you don't have the finances maybe at that point in time to recruit those skills, but there's always a solution in place if you want to continue.
And just to go back to something you said, Josephine, is I think self-inquiry is an important tool to have. And for me, I may have sensed, although I could be projecting, because for me, a negative mindset around money was a major problem in the beginning. And when I did some NLP on myself and did a bit of self-inquiry, okay, what's this about? Because I cannot afford to move forward on this basis. And it was remembering things, that language my parents used to use about money and the filthy rich, those kind of things. I thought, you know what? There's some residue in me that feels uncomfortable. For example, chasing somebody up when their invoice is over 14 days overdue. But again, back to your point, Adriana, if this is not something you're comfortable doing, can you delegate it out? But if you can't, frankly, you got to get over that barrier to just feeling comfortable about, oh, hey, just a gentle reminder about the invoice that doesn't seem to have been paid yet. And that's a very, easy thing for me to do now, but oh my God, in the beginning it wasn't. And, it's quite a big area. I could write a whole book about it. In fact, I've covered it a little bit in Mindset for Business, but it's really a big deal. The things that might be just niggling away at us that we're not comfortable with. But this is where a coach like Adriana comes into there for, because it's the elegantly asked questions that a business coach will pose to somebody that can just lead to huge awakenings about how we might be stymieing ourselves. We've almost hit our time, but if there's any other questions to throw in just quickly, if we can run. Adriana, you okay if we run over a little bit over time?
I might put my email address in the chat as well.
That would be fabulous. Thank you.
I was just going to put quickly, I think Adriana has answered that already, but I think just based on what Josephine said, sometimes it's not only about finance. So how about, because you started very early, like 17 years, 25, and you're having your rhythm, everything is flowing in that direction. I think there are a lot of, some of us having started early enough. So what advice would you give to people who are starting later in life and they are trying to get on top of things and technology is in the way, social media is knocking them left and right, and they don't know where to turn and how to address that in their business? So what advice would you give them?
That's a really good question, because it is a different ball game when you're starting something out at an older age, because you've already got commitments, you're already comfortable in certain things, and there's things that you've picked up along the way, which Jane's touched on, that do form perceptions and fear. But what I can advise with that is, firstly, understand and connect with that business that you want to develop, and make sure that it's something that you fully support. And if you believe and do an analysis and understand that it is something that will be viable, then what you need to do is map out costings. And it's not all about money, but it's hugely important, because if that business is viable, you can reach out to different organizations, government bodies, to get grants to fund the business. And you need to have a business plan as well. And in that, you can identify on the side pretty much what's required to get the business or product launched. Also understand what skill sets you have and what need to be pretty much recruited to do those jobs. So, for example, you touched on technology. I've got a good understanding about technology, but I'll be honest with you, I don't have time to do it. So I outsource all that. I'm the queen of outsourcing, because if I don't do that, I can't be present and work on the strategy for my client and pick up on the urgencies that come up. So as a startup, if you can tap into funding, that's a really good way of being able to have funds up front to, I guess, get in front of the right clients and customers with exposure, and also delegate roles that need to be brought in quickly to support the shortfalls in either the skills you don't have or the ones that you don't want to do as well. So that's one avenue. Also to partner with somebody that's got the skills that are detrimental to getting that business off the ground. If you've got X skill sets or an idea and you might have the money or you might have other skills to inject, a partnership can work, or an investor. That's another thing that you can look at. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I asked because, Jane, as you can see, most of the people on the panel or the people that come through the conversation, I thought, and majority of them could be struggling with that area of life. So I thought I would just throw that one in quickly before we
That's fantastic. So very relevant and timely, what's more. A lot of people in my age group, we're finding out that retirement isn't an option. I mean, in my case, I'm really, in some ways, lucky that I was made redundant, because I got to find something that I would never want to stop doing. But meanwhile, the idea of retiring at 65 or something is just really not that much of an option for a lot of people anymore. So, the more that we can find something we love to do and find the help that we need when we need it, the better for all of us. But Adriana, you have filled in so many gaps. It's just been so wonderful. And again, visit Adriana's website, and probably adrianacecere.com will be the easiest one for people to remember, Adriana. Thank you everyone for coming. And Adriana, you're a font of information. I think people would be lucky to have you as a business coach. And I'm just blown away by your early background. I had no idea. So thank you. And thank you everybody for coming along today.